case of a nuclear explosion.
This is a Fourth Rider news break.
US President Donald Trump issued an executive order that downsizes several federal agencies, specifically the US Agency for Global Media, USAGM, which oversees Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, and various other federal broadcasters. The executive order, recently signed in March, also targets agencies that impact homelessness, labor disputes, and community development. Hours after the executive order was published, media organizations circulated a letter from the USAGM stating that the Congress-approved grant that funds RFE and RL had been terminated. The letter was signed by Kari Lake, who lists her title as Senior Advisor to the USGM, Acting CEO, with authorities delegated by Acting CEO. Lake has been appointed by Trump to take over as head of Voice of America. The nomination must still be approved by the International Broadcasting Advisory Board. RFE and RL President and Chief Executive Officer Stephen Kappas said cancelling the grant agreement would be a massive gift to America's enemies.
A group of Americans killed fighting for Ukraine were recently honored in Kyiv. A memorial service was held on March 14th at Kyiv's Independence Square for 6 Americans killed fighting Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, according to Serhiy Noznenko, photojournalist for Radio Free Europe. At least 50 Americans, most of them military veterans, are reported to have been killed in Ukraine since Russia's 2022 full-scale invasion. American fighters are dying in Ukraine in growing numbers. Bringing their bodies home is a complex task. The relatives of the missing Americans recently expressed in an interview the distressing lack of closure in not being able to bury their sons, the legal limbo of not being able to officially declare their loved ones dead, and the torment inflicted by Russian internet trolls who harass them online due to Trump appointee Hegseth ordering the suspension of the Pentagon's offensive cyber operations against Russia. The intensity of fighting across Ukraine's front eastern lines means the corpses of soldiers from both sides often cannot be collected and litter the battlefield.
US and South Africa relations deteriorate. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio recently posted on X that South Africa's ambassador to Washington is no longer welcome in our great country, and Ebrahim Rasool is a race-baiting politician who hates America and hates President Trump. Rubio's move came amid tense relations between the US and South Africa. President Trump recently issued an executive order suspending aid to South Africa over a controversial land expropriation act that Trump said would lead to the takeover of white-owned farms. Trump also welcomed South African farmers to settle in the United States. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa responded in a post on X that the United States remains a strategic and historic partner. South Africa maintains its active engagement with the United States through political, diplomatic, and economic channels.
Danes and other European nations boycott U.S. goods. There is a growing movement across Europe and Canada to boycott U.S. products. People are joining Facebook groups where they exchange ideas about how to avoid U.S. goods and find alternatives. Anger is inflamed across the Nordic region and possibly strongest in Denmark because of outrage sparked by Trump's threats to seize Greenland. Google Trends represented a spike in searches for the terms boycott USA and boycott America as Trump announced new tariffs, with the top regions including Denmark, Canada, and France. There is also a global backlash building against Tesla as the brand recently became associated with Trump initiating plunging sales in Europe and Canada. And in Germany, 4 Teslas were set on fire and the police are still investigating while a toasted Tesla remains parked in the Steglitz district of Berlin.
The Russian captain of the cargo vessel Solon was arrested and charged for the North Sea collision. The British authorities reported that the Russian captain of the cargo ship that collided with a U.S. tanker has been charged with the death of a crew member, who is missing and now presumed dead. Vladimir Matin, who was the captain of the Portugal-flagged cargo vessel Solon, will appear in Hull Magistrates Court on Saturday and will be charged with gross negligence manslaughter. The 59-year-old from Primorsky St. Petersburg was arrested in northeast England last Tuesday after the collision with the MV Stena Immaculate, the tanker that was transporting jet fuel for the U.S. military in the North Sea. Humberside authorities also confirmed that the missing crew member is now presumed dead after extensive searches.
Meat cultivated from cells is starting to show up in restaurants around the world. Food being produced by scientists, not farmers, is now being served in restaurants all over the world. In laboratory facilities around the globe, through glass walls, you now see tanks where meats produced by cells are grown. Experts expect an increase in the world's meat to be produced this way in the future. More than 150 startups are igniting this industry of lab-created, cultivated, cultured meat. They are part of a young industry that is partnering up with traditional meat companies while aiming to reduce the environmental impact of the world's demand for meat and change global protein production.
This is a Forthrider news break.